Today, we're going a little philosophical. I've spent a lot of time, still do, and probably always will be, thinking about what a good photograph is. What are the key factors that make a good photograph? This is of course an entirely subjective topic, and the answer you hear from people are diverse. This video is my take on explaining my personal philosophy in photography. This of course does not mean that what I say is in any way correct, it's all about the thoughts and the discussion. Therefore, I also want to encourage you to add any thoughts of your own in the comments, because I believe by exchanging each other's thoughts, we can all find personal growth from each other. With that said, let me explain my thoughts. So let's begin with an example. Here are two portraits. Which one do you think is the better photograph? Yeah, possibly. I can't really tell you, but what I am pretty sure about is that the answers will vary. Some people see the left image and think, well, definitely could need some different lighting, why is she so close to the wall, etc. On the other hand, the right portrait shows this man in dramatic soft lighting from the side, making a beautiful portrait. But does beautiful equal good? The photograph on the left is a portrait by Walker Evans, shot in 1936. He was doing photographic work for the Farm Security Administration in the southern states of the US during America's Great Depression, when agricultural workers suffered crop failure and economic hardship. The portrait is part of a photography series documenting the extreme conditions of poverty the farmers in the South endured. The woman is Allie Mae Burroughs, the mother of the Burroughs family. My photography professor showed us the work from Walker Evans in a recent lecture. If I remember correctly, he told us that Walker Evans spent quite some time with the family to slowly get closer to them and eventually got permission to photograph their portraits. The portrait of Allie Mae Burroughs is one of Walker Evans' most well-known work and has even become a symbol for the Great Depression. The photograph on the right is by Sean Tucker. I mainly know Sean Tucker as a street photographer. In contrast to Walker Evans, Sean Tucker is a currently active photographer. You can check out his Instagram page where he shares mostly his street photography. But if you check out his website, you'll also find portraits, including this one. He also has a YouTube channel where he shares his thoughts and process on various topics around photography. So I don't know which photograph you viewed as the better one. I can't give you a right or wrong answer. All I can say is that I see the value of each of these photos in such a different place. Sean Tucker's photo is so beautifully lit, the exposure is perfect, the photo is all in all a high quality image. On the other hand, Walker Evans' photo doesn't really shine because of its lighting or its technical perfection. Instead, what gives this photograph its value is its background, the story behind this woman and the era she represents. The value of this photo lies in the story. So I think you see the problem, right? We can't simply say one photograph is better than the other because it entirely depends on what they are better at. One has the better story to tell, the other is technically better executed. But what we also have to consider is that these factors can't simply be combined. Imagine Walker Evans would have photographed Allie Mae Burroughs the way Sean Tucker photographed the man in his portrait. That would have so much less feeling to it, the story would be completely distorted. Therefore, the technical imperfection is actually perfect in this case. A few weeks ago, I collected my thoughts and came up with 4 values which can each make a good photograph in its own way. The first value is the technical perfection. This is what many people value in a good photograph. For me, this goes hand in hand with commercial photography, those usually being technically perfected. How well lit is the scene or the person? Is the focus exactly where it should be? Is it sharp? Is the noise at its minimum? Is the dynamic range used well to show the maximum amount of detail? These are supposedly the questions that are asked when seeking the technical perfection in a photograph. The second value is the story. Does the photograph tell a story? What is the photograph about? What is happening in the world this photograph is showing? The third value is the meaning. Does the photograph say something? Is it a symbol? Is it a form of criticism? And the last value I found is the feeling. What feeling does the photograph provoke? What emotions does the photographer want the viewer to feel? Now these 4 values can all go separately, but also be combined in one photograph. Let's apply these on the photos by Walker Evans and Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker's portrait is technically perfect, I would say. I think it's beautiful. However, when it comes to story and meaning, I don't know. I'm just guessing here, but I don't think that this studio portrait has any story to tell or a meaning behind it. Lastly, does it give us as the viewer a feeling? Well, of course it does in some way, but it's not what makes the photograph good. I think this photo is a prime example of a good photograph in a technical sense. The other values are not really represented here. Now let's go over to Walker Evans' photograph. I think we can all agree that the main strength of this portrait is the story. The photograph tells the story of the farmers and the hard times they were facing. Another value that is closely related to the story is the meaning. This portrait definitely holds a lot of meaning. It's become a symbol of the Great Depression and how it affected the agricultural workers. Apart from those two values, the photograph also brings a lot of feeling with it. I think portraits in general are often well suited to create photos you can feel, because we as the viewer look into the person's eye and get a glimpse of their world and what they could be feeling. In this sense, I would say this photo is also really good at conveying a feeling. Now, lastly comes the technical perfection. This photo doesn't really show off with that, I would say. The lighting is rather boring, there is no real separation between the wall in the background and the subject. I also find it lacks some contrast. However, that comes down to personal taste, I suppose. Personal taste is what it all comes down to, I guess. I personally think Walker Evans' photograph is the better one, but that is just because I value the story, the meaning and the feeling more than the technical perfection. That, of course, should not mean that there is anything wrong with seeing the most value and pleasure in a technically perfect photo. Everyone is different and everyone has their own taste. I mean, everyone even has their own values. The 4 values I listed are made up by me, therefore other people might have completely different values on their list. The message I'm trying to get across in this video is that a good photograph can be defined by so many different values. I've often had the feeling that many people, especially those starting out with photography, only seek the technical perfection. I myself used to shoot and edit all of my photography to get the technically best possible image. And when surrounded by YouTube reviews praising how much dynamic range the newest camera has, this is totally understandable. But is all that dynamic range really necessary? And as said, in general, there is nothing wrong with the pursuit of technical perfection. However, I found it fascinating when I found all of these other layers of photography which go much deeper. Therefore, I want to encourage you to explore these other values as well, and at times sacrifice the technical perfection to achieve a certain feeling. And let me repeat, the 4 values I listed in this video are entirely personal to me. You might find some other values in photography. If you do, and you feel like sharing them, or if you overall have any thoughts on this topic, feel free to share them in the comment section for me and the community to read. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on this little philosophical excursion on photography. I hope you enjoyed it and could find something to take away from it. If so, leave a like. It helps me out to get noticed by the YouTube algorithm. Consider subscribing if you haven't yet, and I'll hopefully see you again next week in the next video. Until then, goodbye.